are so good. Hey everybody, Jason here, and welcome to another episode of Driver's Paddock. Today we're at Toronto Motorsports Park, and behind me is a Gen 1 Subaru BRZ, but not just any Gen 1 Subaru BRZ. This has a FA20 top end, made it to a FA24 Gen 2 motor bottom end. This car is a little bit special to me because it's actually my FA24 bottom end that when I had a blown motor in my Gen 2, Phil, the owner and builder of this car, took it over to this project. And so let's talk to him. He's going to tell us a little bit about the car, what's been done to it before I take it out on track, and at the end, I'll give you my review. Let's go. So everybody, I have with me Phil, and like I said, he's the owner and builder of this car. He himself has many Time Attack records, Time Attack legend himself. Phil, can you walk me through your car? What have you done to it? Tell me about it.
So it was a ground up clean sheet build. Like I bought a shell, and I built the entire car. So a lot. Rear subframe, hard mounted, spherical everything, half cage, Zeta coilovers, big brake kit. It's got an FA24. That's kind of the gist. Yeah, big ass wing.
Big wing. But tell us a little bit more about the motor. It's not just an FA24.
Yeah, so it's very difficult to put an FA24 in a Gen 1 car. More difficult than you would think, especially a 13 to 16 for some technical reasons. And I'm not a wiring guy, I'm not a tuning guy, I've built motors before. So what I wanted was to be able to take an FA24 and just drop it into a Gen 1, stock harness, stock ECU, to keep it simple, to keep it reliable, to keep it OEM. So it's an FA24 Short Block with FA20 heads that have been machined, just to clear the pistons, and a bit more machining work to make the crank reluctor wheel work, and yeah, just put it all together like a factory engine.
You've driven stock power BRZs, FRSs.
Yeah.
You've driven cars that had E85 tunes.
Yeah.
With the tablet tune as well.
Yeah.
How does this car compare?
This is all about torque. Like an E85 FA20 car makes a little less power, but like similar power way up high. This thing makes, 170 wheel foot-pounds of torque from like 3,000 all the way through. Like it's very, very flat. It kind of feels like a low, like chunky V8, but it's all like a Gen 2. Like it probably feels similar to your Gen 2, just shorter final drive, which will make it feel faster.
I see. What's the horsepower figure on this car?
So it made 202 wheel, but I think that's a slightly conservative number because we dynoed it in the wrong gear, and we dynoed it with very high intake temps because I was using a really shitty cold air intake that's heat soaked. So let's call it 200 wheel, but I think it's got a bit more room with a better intake manifold, with a better header.
I see. So I thoroughly read your whole process of the engine build because not very many people have done it. I think only a few, and there's nothing you can really read up online, and you really had to figure this out for yourself, right?
Yeah, and that's what made it really, really annoying.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if people want to read more about your labor of love, let's call it, with the motor, where can they find it?
I've got a Substack. My name .substack.com. You should probably just put it in the link.
Put it down there.
Kind of long.
Yeah, it's worth the read.
But yeah, it's very nerdy. It's very technical. I think it'll be very easy for people moving forward now that things have been figured out. But it was a really difficult thing to like figure it out and then do it.
But you figured it out and you did it, right? So,
yeah.
I mean, even the paint. You painted this car, right?
Yeah. It needed so much body work that by the time I finished all the body work, I was like, all right, it needs a full paint job. And these cars are cheap to begin with. So there's no way I was going to spend like 10 grand painting it because that would be ridiculous. So yeah, I just painted it in my garage.
Yeah. So I mean, you bought the shell, you painted it, you put everything together, you figured out the motor, you put that in, you built it. Any regrets? Was it worth all the work? I mean, the car's here, you're driving it, you're having a blast, got a big smile on your face, you got a story to tell. What do you think?
It was worth it because so the thing I didn't say was that this was a friend's drift car. I was in like really, really rough shape, both body-wise. Had a spun rod bearing. It was on its 4th engine. And I kind of wanted to save it from like an emotional perspective. But also like after the crash, like I built a car back in the day, like I built a Miata. And then with my FRS, it was very much just like seat time, seat time, seat time. but I do enjoy building cars. So I kind of wanted to like take a break from just being like a time attack guy for a while. I then just do like a proper build. So like it was satisfying. If you were to like add up the hours and the material costs, no, it was an incredibly stupid build to do. But I had a lot of fun doing it, and I think I kind of need the break, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. No, but honestly, seeing the car in flesh, seeing you back out on track with a smile on your face, like,
Yeah.
absolutely worth it, man. You have a one of one car, man, and
Yeah,
everyone who sees this car knows this is Phil's car.
it's a wicked dopamine hit to start a motor that you build for the first time, and it's also a wicked dopamine hit to paint a car other than just like look at it. Even if it kind of looks like shit.
It does
But
not. It looks amazing.
it looks good in certain lighting. It looks bad in like other lighting. But yeah, I'm stoked.
Okay.
Yeah.
Congratulations on an amazing build, but
Yeah.
let's head out on track, man.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, everybody, we are in Phil's FA20, FA24 Gen 1 Subaru BRZ build. Really excited to try this out to see how it compares to my Gen 2 BRZ. But Phil is just a wealth of knowledge, amazing driver as well, of course. So I just got a ride from him, and it was amazing. There we have our friend Giuliano there. Let's see if we can chase him. Right off the bat, feels very familiar. Feels more torquey. good. Oh my gosh. The Zetos are really good. I really like the suspension. The rear wing is doing its job over these, you know, turn 1 over turn 2. The gearing is really good for this track. Car is really communicative. Puts the power down. The front end is so sharp. You can lift to rotate. Oh my God, Phil, you've done an amazing job with this car. It's amazing. It's more torquey than a stock FA24 motor. Maybe that's because of the final drive. I'm really getting higher up in that rev range. But this car is amazing. Wow. So everybody, let's get to my review of Phil's car. But first off, the story is he showed up at 4 p.m. for the evening session. He took me out in his car for a few laps. I drove his car for a few laps and we had some discussions. And by that time, unfortunately, a red flag came out and there was fluids all over the track. And there just wasn't enough time to clean up the track before sunset. And so Phil really came out for me, and I really appreciate that, and shout out to him. I'm sure he could have done a 119 that day on old RT660s, but that's going to be a goal for next year, I guess. But my review of his car, let's start with his motor, of course. The FA20 FA24 hybrid, I really feel like is the torquiest motor out of all the Gen 1 and Gen 2s I've driven. I've driven, of course, my stock car with the stock final drive. I hit about 170, but I'm gear limited actually. I hit the top of 4th, and instead of going to 5th for a split second and double downshifting, I just let it rev out in 4th. So again, I hit about 170. Our good friend Luke, who has a GR86 with a header and full exhaust, a 4.8 final drive, he hits just above 170. Phil's car hit 170, so very close to the stock car. But even compared to Luke's car, it does feel a little bit more torquey. And Phil, in conversation with his tuner, they still think that there's about 20 or 30 wheel horsepower left in the car. Maybe they need to revise the tune, maybe some further modifications, maybe like a better flowing header, for example, to really extract the true performance. But Phil, I know you're going to get that 119 next year, probably even a 118 with that revised tune. So everybody, given those top speeds, somebody might ask, why go to all the trouble to build a FA20 FA24 hybrid motor? And so Phil gave me 2 reasons. And the first reason he said is easier to do that than to figure out how to run a FA24 and a FA20 chassis. He didn't want to mess around with custom or aftermarket wiring harnesses or an aftermarket ECU. For example, it's difficult to try to control the FA24's highest pressure fuel pump in a FA20 ECU. And second, it's actually cheaper. If you already have an FA20 with a spun rod bearing, it's a lot cheaper to buy FA24 Short Block versus a fully dressed FA24. And the FA24 Short Block that he has in his car is actually my old motor. If you know the story, I actually blew up my motor in my FA24 in my Gen 2, and for the core charge of my bottom end, I sold it to Phil for him to start this build. And another option would potentially be K-swap, but if you think about how much that costs, like the whole kit is well over $10,000 when you're finished, right? And so this seemed like, to Phil and to me actually, like after when I think about it, it seems like the most economical and the easiest route to get more power and to rebuild his FA20. But let's get to other things. His car has full sphericals and the car feels amazing. Right, everything is very communicative, everything is very direct, and with the Zeta coilovers, I feel like the suspension is actually really able to act on the chassis. There's no slop, there's no play, and the suspension is so good at handling all the bumps at Cayuga, all the curbs, right? For example, like turn 2 curb, the chicane, the curb after the chicane. You just have a lot of confidence knowing that the suspension is going to keep the wheel on the ground and it's not going to kick the car sideways. It just keeps the wheel there, right? Even on all the low speed stuff, like it dives, it leans, it loads up really, really well. The car is just extremely approachable, it's extremely friendly, I've driven so many BRZs, I was basically able to hop in and just start driving it right away, right? We did 2 back-to-back 120.4s after a 120.8 warm-up lap, but this car absolutely should be in the 119s, if not on a really great day with new tires, definitely in the 18s. And so again, the car is super balanced, it's super stable, and I thought a lot about things that I didn't like, but of course it was hard. I just love the package, I love the setup, I love what he's done. But I suspect that at a very high-speed track like Canadian Tire Motorsports Park Grand Prix track, because of such a big rear wing and not much front aero, the car will probably understeer in the high-speed stuff. Like Cayuga is relatively low speeds, so you're not going to really feel that. But let's say Phil gave me the car today and it was mine, and I could modify it as a track/street car, I wouldn't change a thing. But if it was more of a track car, immediately I would put on some sort of a front splitter with some tunnels to balance out the aero. Maybe with the tunnels, with more aero, I can maybe even run more angle of attack in the rear. That's one. Number two is he runs a little bit of toe in the rear and toe out in the front. I like the toe out in the front. It makes the turn in very sharp. But the toe in the rear, I think the car is just a little bit too stable for my driving style. I would like the car to rotate just a little bit more, and I want to be able to throttle steer the car a little bit more. The toe in just helps with that exit power and putting the power down. But that comes to my next thing. I would probably swap out for a 1.5 way clutch type LSD. The reason why is I would want a little bit more lock, I would want a little bit more throttle steer if possible, and I want a little bit more predictability and over bumps for the diff to not lose its binding force, because torsion diffs, when one wheel is unloaded or over a bump, when you lose that binding force, that friction that's required to lock the LSD, it becomes essentially an open LSD. But Phil's suspension is so good that it keeps the wheel on the ground, so it's not really a big deal, right? The diff is not becoming open, right? The suspension again is keeping the tires on the ground in one stroke, and so that 1.5 clutch style LSD is more of a preference. Again, I like more throttle steer. But another thing I would do, especially if I didn't do a front splitter with tunnels, is I would probably rake his car a little bit. Rake mean I would lower the front a little bit, I would raise the rear a little bit, and here's why. If I put more weight on the front end, the turn-in is going to be even better, right? You're going to push more weight on the front tires, and on the low speed stuff, because of the rake, the aero is not working, the car is going to be really eager to rotate. The rear is going to want to come around, and then you can throttle steer it even more. And I love that. I love cars that are able to do that. And so the rake in the high speed stuff, however, with it being like this, you actually increase the rear angle of attack a little bit, and maybe with a little bit of a diffuser in the back, you can create a little bit of ground effects as well, right? So then you get a car that's really playful and eager to rotate in the slow stuff, but is really stable, really hunkered down in the high speed stuff, which is really what you want. But right now the car is just super stable, super hunkered down. It's not as playful as I'd like it to be, but again, it is very balanced and very approachable. Like I said, I hopped in a few laps already in the low 120s. I mean, I'm just trying to find a thing or two to comment on. The car really is an absolutely amazing car, really set up by somebody who knows what they're doing, who's had a lot of laps around Ontario tracks, and of course his Ontario Time Attack records speak for themselves. Finally, if you want to learn more about Phil's journey as a Time Attack driver and his build, please go check out his Substack. I'll leave the link in the description below. It's definitely worth the read. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll catch you on the next one.